for me, the dating stuff gave me that drive to want to be better in a lot of these other areas. Like I had no idea about any of this before I started getting better with dating. And I think that was the first driver of me going out there, improving with women, and doing something I thought initially was impossible. And then I was like, okay, what else? What else do I think is impossible that I can do? Maybe I can create the exact lifestyle that I want and not have to like follow anyone else.
Welcome back to another episode of the My Latin Life podcast. Since 2014, My Latin Life has been your trusted guide to traveling and living in Latin America. My guest today is one of our most requested guests of all time. His name is Dave Perrotta. He's a dating and lifestyle coach for men. He's a best-selling author with over 50,000 books sold. He's a YouTuber. He goes hard on Instagram as well. You guys can catch him on all platforms. He's been doing this for a long time. Dave, welcome to the podcast.
What's going on, man? It's good to be here.
Absolutely, sir. Where are you calling in from today?
I'm actually very randomly in Philadelphia. I've been over here for a few weeks, been kind of bouncing around. Actually in the process of looking for a new home base. I know we were talking about that before we hopped on here. But yeah, I'm from the Northeast.
Yeah. And to tie things to Latin America, you've lived in Mexico City for, I think, 5+ years. You've lived in Bogota, Colombia. What are some other spots in Latin America that you're familiar with?
Yeah, so Mexico City, obviously the big one. Bogota, I've spent probably a series of like 2 to 3 months there recently. Spent some time, like 6 months living in Medellin back in the day, as well as just hanging out. Like I lived in Playa del Carmen for a couple months. Just kind of been all around Mexico here and there for visiting, traveling. Been to Peru for a month. So just kind of bounce around different places. Definitely want to keep exploring more. Yeah.
Sweet. So, guys, Dave has a lot of experience in Latin America, and I think he brings a unique experience to the podcast because he's a dating coach as well. I think tons of our listeners are interested to hear about dating in Latin America, and they know that I kind of purposely avoid it because I'm also like afraid of, crossing the line. But I'm fully confident having you on the podcast because you've been basically teaching dating and relationship stuff since I want to say 2014, and you've done a good job of kind of keeping it clean. And I don't know how you've made it so long without a scandal, but you've done it.
No, I mean, I've tried to keep it. I've tried to rebrand myself a little bit over the last few years, and just kind of have more of a premium brand with what I talk about, the messaging that I have, and also just not being canceled because it's hard out here for a dating coach these days to not get canceled. You know what I mean? Like you got to be careful.
Yeah, you're only the second one I've had, even though I know a bunch of them personally, a bunch of these guys. But the only other one we've had is Justin Mark, a Toronto-based dating coach.
Oh, yeah, I know him. Yeah, he's a cool guy.
Yeah, Justin's cool.
We actually hung out back in Mexico City.
Oh, really? There you go.
Yeah, a few years ago.
Yeah. And I wanted to sort of tie it into, I always mention how all the podcast guests kind of know each other. So we have an episode with Joe DeJenny that's going to be coming out unreleased. We have the Martin Johnson episode about Buenos Aires. We have Freddie Lansky was like episode 3, I think, 3 or 4, one of the early episodes, who's one of your buddies as well. And so, it seems like you know a lot of the previous guests.
Yeah, no, I mean, a lot of those guys, it's like the old Mexico City crew we had rolling out there for a while. So yeah, that's awesome.
So Dave, do you want to, for people who are unfamiliar with you, just give a little bit of your background story and how you got to where you are today?
Yeah, so I mean, I grew up like a pretty shy guy, pretty anxious, didn't really talk too much, kind of going through middle school, early years of high school. And then I kind of perked up. I was like, I don't want to just be this super shy, awkward guy for my whole life. I want to figure out how to talk to girls. So I just had, for whatever reason, I just had this motivation to figure stuff out, especially when it came to dating. And I just put a lot of time, focus, energy into it. Going out there, getting rejected, talking to girls, being labeled as a creepy guy when I was in college by like a whole sorority because I would just go like balls to the wall, like just talk to as many girls as I could. And I was doing this for a few years until I pretty much got to the point where I was going out in Boston after college for a couple of years, realizing like, hey, like I'm actually pretty good at this stuff now. I know how to go get out there, talk to girls, get them attracted. and guys were starting to respect my viewpoint on things. Maybe I'll start writing about this. So I kind of started a blog back around like 2011. That grew a little bit, little by little. Eventually started doing YouTube videos, Instagram videos, writing books, and it's all kind of grown from there. And over the process, have been able to help tens of thousands of guys to really improve their dating life, to really just look at things from a different perspective, and have a lot more success.
Hmm. Hmm. So you grew up in the Northeast. My understanding is your dad is a professional comedian.
Yeah, my dad's a stand-up comic. Like he's opened up for Bill Burr. He used to book shows for Bill Burr back in the '90s. Like he's opened up for like Dane Cook, like Colin Quinn. Yeah, so I kind of grew up watching my dad do stand-up, and my dad's style was basically messing with the crowd. Just basically kind of like Don Rickles type of style, very much improv, picking on people, connecting things in the moment. And I think a lot of the way I talk to women kind of evolved from that, because used to go to so many of his shows growing up.
Yeah. And I think it's kind of a funny paradox where you say that you were very shy, but you had a father that was doing stand-up comedy. Do you think that you've always had sort of like a dueling introvert extrovert, or you must have picked up some stuff from just the way he interacts with the world?
Yeah, no, I definitely picked up some stuff, from the way he interacts with the world. I think I was always kind of like an extrovert, but I just didn't know. Like I was just shy, you know what I mean. And then once I kind of broke my shell, it was kind of off to the races. I could talk to anyone, do anything, uh, but it was about breaking that shell because I was always a young kid growing up, the younger kid in my crew. Everyone else in my neighborhood was a year or two older than me, so I was naturally the more like shy, quiet one because everyone else was older, right? But once I got out of my shell, things felt really easy from there.
Yeah. And you grew up in Providence?
Grew up in Cranston, like it's like a little suburb 5 minutes outside of Providence, Rhode Island. I know Rhode Island's not a very common state, smallest state out there, but yeah, that's where I grew up and kind of started getting my chops. Where I really kind of came into my own was in Boston. In my early 20s though. That's when it was. I would drive up there, eventually get a spot up there with How to Beast. Another YouTuber, and we just like, all right, let's do this. Let's go out and try to talk to as many girls as we can. And we kind of grew from there.
Yeah, yeah. I'm kind of just curious, like, did your father, you must have talked to your dad and said, like, look, I'm trying to get out of my shell. I'm trying to, I'm going out a lot, trying to be social. Was he ever just like, look, buddy, put together a 5 minute stand-up routine that'll teach you everything you need to know about, confidence and crowd control and stuff?
No, it's funny. He never said that, but he was kind of I think in some ways a natural in himself with girls. Like he never had trouble getting girls into his life from the time he was really in middle school, high school, and yeah, I think I definitely picked up a lot from his personality. I tried to pick and choose. I guess you could say some of the best things, leaving some of the not so great things like off to the side, and just integrate that into my personality and become a guy who was really solid with women. Yeah, so it's
Hmm.
kind of a crazy culmination of all that.
And when I think about like the early PUA teachings surrounding mystery and everything, it was very there was doing the magic and all these gags and stuff like that. And I think sort of in the late 20 in recent years there's been a move away from doing like dancing monkey type stuff to more to like less entertainment oriented stuff, I would say. And I think that that's a big step that a lot of guys had to overcome, where they were just doing too much and being too animated and too like dancing monkey style, as some of us call it. Did you kind of experience that, especially with the comedy background?
Well, there's definitely been a shift in the way dating works and the way dating advice is given out. I think there's a very small percentage of guys who want to be sort of like that pickup artist type of guy who just goes out and views dating as a sport. Uh, I think there's an aspect of it that's kind of fun and interesting when you're in your 20s, especially in your early 20s. But I think as you grow and evolve, it really comes down to okay, like why am I even doing this? The whole point of me trying to work in my dating life is to find like a great woman that I could build something with. And if all you're doing is these weird pickup tactics like dance, the dancing monkey stuff, like the peacocking, all this stuff, that might get you some attention from girls out the gate. That's not going to help you become the type of guy that they're going to want to have around in their life and build something with. Like, it's probably going to do the opposite. So I think new dating advice has shifted. And obviously, stuff that I try to focus on is, okay, let's not just talk about, the flirting, the picking up. And like, yeah, obviously you need to get options, you need to meet women, but you also need to understand how to run relationships the right way. You also need to understand how to vet, how to test for compatibility, how to actually, pick up on green flags, red flags, and actually become, and not just focus on dating, but also focus on the other stuff like building up your career, your finances, becoming the whole package, like the whole package
Hmm.
of being an attractive man, rather than just being like some pickup artist dude who knows a few techniques. Because that might be fun at first, but it's not going to last, and eventually that facade is going to wear off.
Yeah, and I noticed that that's where a lot of your content is heading around being a whole package guy and thinking of yourself holistically. And everyone needs to check out Dave on Instagram, dave.perrotta, two R's, two T's. So dave.perrotta, he does tons of Instagram reels where he's giving you kind of tips um, about this mindset stuff and just tons of good stuff. It's hard for me to encapsulate it all here, but everyone needs to go check that out. Um, yeah, I almost want to like touch upon some of the things you mentioned, but I think we should kind of just keep going in a little bit of an order by year, just to sort of get up to date a little bit. We can do it pretty fast, but I really wanted to hear about how you went from Boston to Vietnam and hooked up with the Dynamite Circle guys. Um, Dan Andrews has been a previous podcast guest, the host of the Tropical MBA. So if anyone likes the Tropical MBA and has heard that episode, perk your ears up for this section of the of this conversation. So how did you like get the opportunity to go to Vietnam?
Yeah, man. So one of my guys, my buddies I used to run with in Boston, this guy Derek, he ended up getting a job with Dan and Ian out there as like their intern in Vietnam, and he was telling me all about it for a year. Like we have weekly video calls, and he'd be like, "Man, you got to get out here. There's so many entrepreneurs. It's this crazy thing." This crazy network called the Dynamite Circle. I'm like, well, what the fuck? Like, what is this? I have no idea what this is, but I started learning about it little by little. And eventually I was like, all right, I need to learn some type of high income skill so that I can get out there too. Because I want to be able to live anywhere. I want to be able to meet cool people and do all these different things. And I think I was working as a door to door sales guy at the time, like working from, I don't know, like 10 a.m. to like 7, 8 p.m. every night. It was crazy. So yeah, from there, I started teaching myself copywriting, which basically is like email marketing, sales pages. Probably going to get destroyed by Chat GPT, but we'll see. But back then, obviously, obviously like it was one of the prime good high income skills. It still is a good one to learn. So learn that. Ended up finding a good job with a guy who lived out there in Vietnam, an American guy. I ended up getting the gig with very little experience. He just liked my energy. He liked my excitement. Moved out there to Vietnam, back in 2014. I think like June, July of 2014. And then from there, I was able to connect with, my one buddy Derek. He connected me with all these other guys like Dan, and Ian out there as well as just a ton of guys in the Dynamite Circle who had cool businesses. Some of them were just getting started. Some of them were, already had thriving businesses. But it just kind of opened my mind to what was possible, and solidifying the thought that, I can have this life of travel. I can have this life where I can just do whatever I want, live wherever I want. Uh, it's there for the taking.
Hmm.
And I just kind of took that and built from it. I ended up getting clients while I was over there with copywriting. Ended up writing my first dating book because I was just surrounded by all these motivated people. It just motivated me as well. And it was funny because I made a song over there called "Daily Cafe Hustling." If you look it up, it's on YouTube. It's like a funny rap song, a remix to "Every Day We Hustle." And we ended up having a launch party for the song, for the music video on YouTube. And then Dan Andrews ended up coming to the launch party while we were like playing the song like live. I just thought it was the coolest thing because I used to listen to Dan and Ian back when I was uh, in my cubicle, my old job from a few years beforehand, and now they were at my music video launch party in Vietnam. It was this ridiculous thing, but that's kind of like the genesis of the whole journey. And from
That's
there,
awesome.
yeah, it
And
just kind
that
of
was in
led me to all
Saigon.
these different things. That was in Saigon, yeah.
Yeah. How many years did it take you after you graduated? You got your accounting degree. How many years were you kind of working a normal job in Boston or the Northeast and just sort of dreaming and listening to the Tropical MBA podcast before you made the jump to Vietnam?
Well, it's funny because I didn't even like get an accounting job. I worked as an intern at an accounting firm for 3 or 4 months during my senior year of college, and then after that, I just knew it wasn't for me. So my strategy was basically let me get like a shitty job that just pays me something so I can save up money and then figure it out from there. Because I didn't want to get the golden handcuffs type of thing. So
Hmm.
I don't know, some like weird admin job at some real estate firm. I can't even remember exactly what it was. And then from there, I was like working 40 hours a week for like 4 months. Quit that. I was like, I'm going to start my online business now. Of course, I burned out, like completely failed, ran out of money within like 2 months. Completely did not have the foresight like that I needed to have. That's when I had to go back, get a door to door sales job. Ended up doing that for 10 months, saved up a little bit more money, and I did a little bit more intelligently the second time around. Started building a skill while I still had the job. Had a bit more of a nest egg saved up. Still not that much. I think I maybe had like 5 or 6K, but I was living at my parents' house. I knew that was going to get me at least like 5 or 6 months, and that was really all I needed to go from living with my parents in Cranston to basically launch my launch pad to get to Vietnam.
That must have been an interesting, like, intermediate period. And the reason that I'm focusing on it is because a lot of people listening to this are kind of in a intermediate period, if you will, where maybe they're just kind of ready. They don't know when is the right moment to take the jump. And so it's just kind of cool to hear other people's stories, especially back in like 2014 when there was a lot more uncertainty about working online and so forth. Because you graduate with an accounting degree, you're in Boston, you could have easily worked for like a big four firm or something like that. And you're uh, selling door to door, living at your parents, driving an hour and a half into Boston to go like game with the guys at night and stuff. Must have been an interesting period, but it sounds like you had a vision.
Yeah, I think I just always view life as an adventure, especially there in my early 20s. I was like, well, I want to create a good life for myself. I don't want to just go down this normal path. So in order to get there, I'm going to have to take risks. And if I'm not where I want to be, then how much am I really risking right now by taking all these risks? Like it's either this or some shitty life. So there was really nothing to lose, and I just kind of went for it. Oh, I got 5 6K in the bank. Let me quit. All right, look from here. Let me learn copywriting. All right, I get a job for 2K a month in Vietnam. Let's go. And I just didn't even question it. just trusted, I don't know, I guess my intuition and just, grabbed myself by the balls and just went for it. And thankfully ended up working out. There were some ups and downs along the way for sure. But yeah, had I not taken that risk, who knows? Maybe I'd be stuck in an accounting firm somewhere, in a job that I don't like and not doing any of this.
Because it's really the type of thing where you need to see it to believe it, right? And you kind of knew how much better things were outside the states, but probably only once you got to Saigon and got hooked up with the guys and saw the cost of living, the just everything about a new place that it was kind of seeing is believing, and it sounds like there was no turning back after that.
Well, it's funny, man, because I didn't even necessarily have all these crazy dreams of travel. I just wanted to be free and to find some sort of way to make an impact. And I think once I got to Vietnam, the travel bug kind of hit me where I was like, oh, it is cool. There are advantages to living in a different country that I didn't know of. Like I think at the time my rent was like $300, and my cost of living was maybe like a little bit over $1,000. This is back in 2014. I think it's probably like higher than that now to live in Vietnam. But like I was kind of blown away with just like I guess like the geo arbitrage, like the income arbitrage of it all. And the opportunities and like the dating opportunities too were cool. And it kind of blew my mind and really opened my mind up to wanting to travel to all these other different places.
And during this period, you kind of had already built a little bit of momentum in Boston. I literally remember watching early How to Beast videos before he had even moved on to like Austin, Texas or whatever. I remember the old like drone videos near Boston Common and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Um, and so were you trying to get him out to Asia or outside the US? And he's like, no, man, I'm going to stay here. Was there a bit of a like tug of war there?
He wasn't really well when I first met him. Like I was moving to Asia the month after, so I met him a month before I moved to Vietnam actually, and he had his blog, I had my blog, so there wasn't I didn't know him well enough to try to convince him to go to Asia. And then by the time I got back, we ended up living together for 6 months over in Boston, and then we had a podcast at the time I think called Beastly Gentlemen, which is kind of funny. We used to have it actually got like decently big at the time back in like 2015, but then from there I ended up moving to Medellin, Colombia, and he ended up coming out visiting me a bunch out there. But he was always more of an American and Europe guy. Like I don't know if he could take the grittiness of Latin America as much as I could, but I love like the grittiness and the grime of like Latin America and Asia. I'm all about it.
Yeah, I mean, so many directions I could ask you about this. I remember one early video where it's you guys in Mexico City, and he has like a Spanish speaking background, right? Like he's like, I don't know, his parents are from Spain or something, right? But I assume you don't, right? Like you're like a New England, like a Italian American guy, right? But it's I from what I remember, your Spanish levels were around the same level.
Yeah, no, I mean, my Spanish got pretty good pretty quickly once I lived in Colombia for 6 months and then Mexico City, was dating a Mexican girl. So, who only spoke Spanish at the time. She eventually learned English. But no, all of that, was highly motivating for me to learn Spanish, and I really put effort into doing it. I never thought I was going to speak a different language, but you go down to Latin America and that motivation comes quick.
Tell us, how does Latin America motivate you to learn Spanish?
But yeah, I mean, you go to a place like Colombia, Mexico City, just beautiful women everywhere, and I remember getting there. I'm like, I can't communicate with any of these girls. I have to ask all of them if they speak English. This is super annoying. Or I have to go on dates and Google Translate. I can't do this shit. So I just started. It was funny because like a bunch of us started taking lessons. A bunch of us in Medellin at the time. We started taking lessons with the same Spanish teacher. We'd all meet up with them one on one at the same cafe every day, or like 3 times a week, like back to back to back, and we would just tell war stories from like the night before, the weekend before, and you'd hear like all these war stories in Spanish from like a different perspective from all of our crew. But I did that 3 times a week, and then combine that with going out talking to girls during the day, during the night, on dates, girls I was dating, and then yeah, it came pretty quick from there.
That's awesome. So that was your technique is you met up with the teacher in person and then told them about how the bar went the night before.
Yeah, well, it was like that, and then obviously he was teaching. He had like a lesson plan and stuff like that. But the conversation always tended to go. You get a bunch of 25, 26 year old guys you're coaching up. I mean, that's in Colombia. You're gonna hear those kind of war stories.
Yeah, I think he forgot about the lesson too.
Yeah, probably.
That's awesome. Um, So you spent some time in different places. How did you eventually settle on Mexico City? Because you're pretty early to Mexico City. Just doing the math, if you lived there for like 5 years and you've been gone for a while, so we're talking like when did you kind of move to Mexico City and make it your base, and what led to that decision?
Yeah, I mean, I first got there towards the end of 2016, like shortly after I left Medellin. I was living in Playa del Carmen for a few months, and then decided I wanted to go check out Mexico City with some other friends. And we got there for the first month. I loved it. I thought it was super cool. Originally, was only going to stay for a month. Decided, oh, let me stick around for another month. And I think like the second day of my second month, I ended up meeting the girl I ended up dating for 5 years, and met her. And yeah, like that was more reason for me to stick around, and that it was that combined with me loving the city, just like how walkable it was, how chill it was, like the parks, like the greenery, uh, just the scene and the vibe. I was a huge fan of it, and yeah, it was just a beautiful place, and I did kind of feel like a pioneer in some type of way because there was guys like me, Freddie, just the early beginnings of a crew out there that was going to grow over time. Ended up becoming a great crew for several years there, but yeah, so it was a combination of it just being a dope city, having a girl, and then a crew developing over time there that really kind of kept me around.
Yeah. What were the early days like in Mexico City, and I guess how has it changed over time?
Well, the early days, yeah, there were gringos, but not nearly as many gringos. The nightlife, I would say, back before COVID, back before the earthquakes, was a bit better, especially in Condesa. Like the main, I would say, like the main gringo area over there. Like they used to have
Or the Pata Negra?
they had the Pata Negra. They had like all those. They had like legitimately good nightlife in that area. Like Don Quintin, like they had good nightlife in that area. And now like they just don't really have that anymore. So that was like the heyday of that area, and it was super dope because we all lived right next to it, and it's great for pulling girls, doing all of those things. So that was a lot of fun. And yeah. I would say the dating was a lot of fun too. I think I wasn't as advanced maybe as I am now in terms of just the way I look at things, my perspectives on things. Just kind of how I approach dating now is a bit different than it was then. And I like didn't fully grasp the opportunity that maybe it was at the time, but I still had a ton of fun and I still really enjoyed myself out there. And yeah, I was doing that while kind of growing. I guess for the first couple of years I was with my girl. It was kind of like it wasn't really an exclusive thing, so I was kind of doing my own thing while being with her, and that was fun. Then eventually we became exclusive over time, but yeah, it was a great time. I love Mexico City. That time period, from like 2015 to 2016 to like 2021, 22, it's always going to have a place in my heart.
Hmm. Yeah, so many questions. I continue to be impressed that you were there so early on. Um,
It was the most
2015.
random thing, man. Like the only we had no rhyme or reason to go there. I think I knew there was one guy in Playa del Carmen who recognized me from like my blog, and like we had talked, and he showed us around Playa del Carmen. He had one friend in Mexico City, and me and my friends like, fuck, let's just go to Mexico City for a month. We know one guy there. And he kind of showed the guy showed us around. I hadn't heard nothing about Mexico City up to that point. I thought it was going to be a shithole. I had no idea what to expect. Yeah, did it end up just being super dope?
Yeah. And during this period of time, were you supporting yourself primarily through like dating coaching related activities or traditional copywriting or and like internet marketing type stuff?
Yeah, so it was like up to this point, it was mostly copywriting up until around like 2016. So funny, like right after I moved to Mexico City, I launched my book, Conversation Casanova. That book ended up like blowing up, and being like that. That's one of the ones like that one sold over 50,000 copies, and it still sells a lot to this day. And that kind of like launched me from basically being a fringe copywriter dating coach to okay, now I can do this full time and I can work on other stuff. I can start making videos. I can put more of a focus into things rather than before. It was like, okay, this is a cool thing, but can't really quite support myself on it yet. So it was a big lever for me.
So the book was the big step for you.
Yeah. It allowed me. It gave me the passive income that it gave me the time to do a lot of other things.
Makes sense. And so for a long period of time you just had your blog and then the books, like you hadn't even forayed. I guess you'd done a little bit of YouTube at that point, but when did you start taking that seriously?
I started taking YouTube seriously in like 2018. Beast had How to Beast. He started his YouTube channel in 2017. And he was constantly telling me, bro, you got to start a YouTube channel. What are you doing? And eventually took him like a year. I think I was pretty focused on some other stuff in 2017. And eventually, yeah, he really got me into it in 2018. I started making videos twice a week and just kind of growing from there.
Yeah, dude, I remember this. It'd be like, "It's my buddy Dave," and then you'd like be like, "Yo," and you'd like hit the peace sign.
Super, super, super cringy videos at first for sure. Just like yelling at the camera. Yeah, it's cringy to look back on.
No, but I think one thing that's cool is you've always had a growth mindset, and you've actually been probably more deliberate about things or more um, just like self development oriented than maybe like is everything that you do actually seems very effortless in a lot of ways. But like I'll give you one thing. I remember I've had some YouTube channels too, and I used to listen to this YouTube podcast with Tim Schmoyer for like YouTube creators. And you're laughing because you know what I'm bringing up is that you were like part of this what would you call it, like mastermind group of YouTube creators, and they'd be like, oh, you got to change your the thumbnail or the background on the channel, and you got to have the intro video that like tells you what your channel is about. And you were very like part of this, and you were like the only kind of dating coach that was in this group. And I just remember listening to episodes of this podcast and being like, oh yeah, that's so like remember being like, ah, this guy, I remember this guy, and this is years ago now.
Yeah, no, I mean, I've always tried to hire coaches and mentors for different things, like whether it be business, mindset, YouTube, and that was for me. You know, Tim Schmore was a guy I respected on YouTube. I saw he had like a program. Like, fuck, I need to join this program. I need to get some tips and some better strategies here. And yeah, I think that was a good thing for understanding how YouTube worked, and then also understanding how to make better videos. Which I think now I sound a lot more natural in my videos and just when I talk and things like that than I did back then, and that was definitely a helpful thing.
Yeah. I think it's cool that you didn't just, I don't know, like 100% copy the how to beast model, that you were kind of also trying to go your own direction. And, you're getting information from Tim and probably tons of other sources. And um, I always respect people that have a sort of like a growth mindset and a self improvement mindset. And I think pretty much anyone that was in this space back in like 2015, 2016, they had to have been very, very self improvement oriented.
Yeah, no, I would definitely say so. You're talking about like in terms of dating, the dating space, just like the online business space, or like a combo of everything.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of overlap. And I talked about this a little bit with Joe, was that, the overlap is that these are people that think like, I'm ultimately responsible for designing my ideal lifestyle, and I'm responsible for what my life looks like, and I can improve my situation, whether that be changing my city, or starting to make money online, or improving my dating opportunities. And I feel like uh, there's sort of like a continuum, and it's all interrelated.
Yeah, well, at the end of the day, man, it's almost like you're hacking life. Like, oh, most people have shitty dating lives. I'm gonna figure like I'm gonna hack this. I'm gonna figure it out and somehow create like a great one for myself. And I'm gonna somehow like most people work on just in a 9 to 5 job in the same place. I'm gonna figure out how to hack this so I can just do it from anywhere. And it's just a constant process of taking control over every area of life, so that way you don't have to rely on other things. That way you do have the control, you have the freedom to do what you want, how you want to do it. And I mean, I think like that's kind of the way life should be lived.
Yeah. And so you've obviously learned a ton about internet marketing and everything over the past decade. And so I'm curious, like, do you ever uh, sort of ask yourself how long you're going to continue with the dating stuff? Because you've been doing it for a long time, and I mean, obviously you're an expert now. You've got to the point where you're one of the most respected names of the industry. But I find that maybe a lot of people over time, they get maybe bored of it, about talking about kind of the same things a little bit. So I don't know, what's your thoughts on like keeping it fresh, or potentially like moving on at some point?
Yeah, I'll definitely move on at some point. Exactly when that'll be, I'm not sure. I'm definitely still enjoying the coaching, still enjoying transitioning. Like these last few years have been more of a transition for me to just a more premium type of brand. You know what I mean? And attracting more of a premium type of like client as well, like that type of guy who
Hmm.
who is busier, who is like more so looking for a girlfriend or a girl to build with, rather than like I don't know, maybe the early 20s guy who's looking for a pickup artist or this or that, right? So that's been an interesting transition for me, both business wise and just like life wise, like kind of going into that zone. Um, and a lot of that too has taught me a lot about business. Has taught me a lot about how to actually build a brand the right way, and a lot of things that taught me a lot about sales and a lot of things that kind of go in with that. So I have a lot of high income skills. I have a lot of things that I could build off of with and build out from what I'm doing now. But yeah, I'll probably continue to do what I'm doing now for longer. I'm not sure exactly how long, but definitely, I've already transitioned a little bit into, doing some real estate stuff. I could do some long distance real estate investing. Could potentially see myself doing consulting sometime down the road, things like that. I'm always, potentially, looking into buying businesses, talking to guys like Martin for that. Uh, so I'm always kind of like exploring new possibilities, and whether it be me doing something else while also doing the dating stuff, or just transitioning out of it completely, maybe in the next 5-10 years, we'll see exactly kind of how that plays out.
Hmm.
But Yeah, I mean, I'm not trying to just be like a one trick pony. That's why, like I hired a real estate coach and I was like, all right, how do I get into long distance real estate investing? And then the next step is probably going to be, okay, how do I buy a business? All right. And then doing that and then, kind of continuing the growth from there.
Yeah. You know what though? I bet a lot of people who were dating coaches that kind of gave it up, they're kind of regretting it because um, it's definitely an acute need out there. You know what I mean? And it's like what do they say? Like health, wealth, and relationships. Those are the three money areas online. And so, yeah, I mean, it must be. It's definitely a good niche to be in, as if you can do it like yourself and be calibrated and keep from getting canceled and kind of running a clean ship.
Yeah, well, I think early on it was more of the pickup crowd that maybe we were all attracting, and then over time, as you like shift the brand and stuff, and dating, I don't know, I feel like dating advice kind of got a little bit more normal, especially the way that we talk about it in terms of
Like
becoming
less
just
taboo.
yeah. But also like in terms of the way we talk about like becoming just like the overall good, attractive guy. With
Hmm.
your shit in order, as well as the communication skills needed to go talk to women that you want. Like having that whole package, rather than just being like these weird tactics, because the weird tactics was always kind of like that fringe thing, right? But becoming like the whole package of what an attractive guy should be. A lot of guys are interested in that, and a lot of guys are looking to do that and become, and be able to really get the type of girls that they're excited about in their life. So I think that's been the biggest change and has helped the dating advice industry to kind of evolve.
Hmm. What do you think are some of people's biggest mental blockers or the areas where people need the most support?
In terms of dating,
Yeah, yeah, in terms of like the dating clients that you've seen over time.
yeah, I think the average guy just has so many blind spots and so many areas where he needs to shift his perspective on things. Everything from how online dating works and how to build out a profile to like how to approach a girl and do it without all these insecurities and anxieties. All the way to how do you actually date a girl and how do you go about that to where you're not just rushing into something with the wrong girl and all of a sudden you're living with her 2 weeks or 3 weeks in, which I've seen some guys do, and then their whole life falls apart, right? So it's about kind of becoming more of a grounded guy. It's a big thing for a lot of guys. Um, you know, doing all those other things like getting your style on point, being able to go out there, talk to girls, being able to cut out all these weird excuses like, oh, I'm so busy, or oh, like I'm just gonna focus on other things, or yeah, it's like this or that. It's like, bro, it's bullshit. Like you're being dumb. Like just
Hmm.
like let's set some attention behind this because clearly this isn't something you want to put off for 10 years. So let's put some attention behind it and go get this handled now. So you don't have to be a 35-year-old guy who might even be wealthy but just has no women in his life. That's not a good position to be in. Let's get this shit down now. So yeah, to answer, like the short answer, a lot of blind spots, a lot of things that guys need to correct, and that's what we do. Is like help them correct it little by little uh, to get to where they want to be at.
I feel like that's the inspiration for a lot of your Instagram reels where like a client maybe just hit you with like the weirdest excuse and you probably told them one on one, but then you also kind of made a reel out of it. Cause I can almost sense like a bit of like frustration where with these guys where you're like, look, you need to like problem solve and like
Well,
and
yeah,
it's
I mean,
like
it
very
all comes
funny.
down to like basic problem solving, right? It's like, okay, bro, you want to get a photo shoot, but you can't do it because your barber's booked out for 3 weeks. Okay, is there another barbershop you can go to like tomorrow? Like let's make an appointment, go get the haircut, and then move the photo shoot up to Saturday, and like let's get these photos and get you moving, right? So a lot of times it's basic problem solving. Most people don't have that skill of like, okay, how identify the problem, here's how to solve it. Most people just see a problem and they're like, oh, I guess there's this problem, and I guess I just can't do anything about it. And then that's how they treat everything, right? But if you can just become a problem solver, your life becomes so much easier.
Hmm. And if you meet someone that is looking to move to Latin America from the States, and maybe they've expressed that to you, they say, "Bro, I can't wait to get down to Mexico City with you." Blah blah blah. Do you tell them to focus on their money until they get to Latin America, or do you tell them to, you know, continue dating and whatnot in the States, you know, on a temporary basis, as they're kind of like putting the chips in order for Latin America?
It's funny, man, because one of my employees is trying to make a move down to Latin America, at least temporarily, and I've been kind of advising him a little bit on where he should go, what he should do, things like that. But to kind of answer your question, I think it really comes down to figuring out what city you want to go to, what your income needs are to get to that city, whether it's building a skill or saving a certain amount of money and then getting down there and building a skill. You got to figure out what outcome you want, and then you got to just execute it, right? And if that means like buckling down for a few months, building a skill, and then waiting to date until you get down there, that's fine. Or if you can do a little dating and then just build a skill, whatever you can do, like figure out how to hit your outcome, get down there as soon as you can, and then also like do an honest assessment of what city might be best for you. And that's why guys like I also know guys like Jake Nomad, which I think you've seen. I think he's probably been on this podcast before. Yeah.
Jake Nomada has been a podcast guest, and we're
Yeah,
buddies.
yeah.
We've met up in person.
Funny, I only met him one time, I think, at a gym in Mexico City, like briefly, maybe 5 or 6 years ago, before he was ever doing that. I think he might have recognized me from, I can't remember exactly from where or what it was, maybe something from my blog. But then, yeah, we ended up kind of keeping in touch. He became friends with a lot of my friends over time, and yeah, he seems like a cool guy. I know we've talked about the idea of doing some type of conference in Bogota or somewhere together.
Mhm.
For like guys who want to go to Latin America. What was the question again? I
It would
forgot.
be like, should guys go monk mode for a couple months before they get to Latin America just to potentially accelerate getting there faster?
Yeah, yeah. As far as going monk mode, I would probably say, yeah. I mean, if that's what it takes for a few months, then do it. Yeah, just do whatever you can. If that's the outcome you want to get to, do whatever you can to get there. Uh, but be efficient about it. Don't be sitting there like, oh, I'm gonna do this. Maybe in like 2 years I can get down there. It's like you can get down there. Like I moved to Vietnam within 6 months of quitting my job. Uh, and I've figured it out, right? And that was back in 2014 when a lot of the stuff was pretty new. You can learn a high income skill a lot sooner than that, and start making money from it. So
Mhm.
try to be efficient, and make ambitious goals and try to hit them.
Okay, I have a question for you that I'm very curious to hear how you're going to answer this, because it's hard to answer, and it's hard to answer in a PG-13 way. But how much better is it in Latin America? Is it really that much of a black and white difference from dating in the United States? Like, are guys going to really be able to have a significantly better experience?
Well, what I would say is if you really suck at dating in the US, it's not going to magically fix all your problems going to Latin America. Like I've seen guys struggle and suck with girls in Latin America who sucked it in the US, right? So you still need to get the fundamentals down in terms of like understanding how to communicate, how to attract women, how to flirt, how to do all of those things. But if you can build those skills and you have that, then it's almost going to be like, however good you build those skills, it's almost going to be like 3 or 4x when you get to Latin America. Because yeah, you are going to have a strategic advantage over there because you're like the new guy, like you're like the new flavor, right? Like they're not used to seeing. Well, it's becoming less. That's becoming less and less of a thing, right? Because gringos are all over Latin America now. But even still, if you go to the right places, you're still going to stand out, and it's going to be easier. And then there's also it's going to be easier to find as well, like very feminine women, like less. I would say like super woke women are in Latin America, which yeah, I mean I'm not the biggest fan of that whole thing. And then yeah, there's a lot of good girlfriend material girls down there as well who are nurturing, fun, sweet. They take good care of themselves, and yeah, it's a good life down there, and you can find a great girl down there as well. Um, but if you suck in the U.S., like you're probably going to suck there too. So like, don't think of it as a shortcut of I suck at dating. I'm just going to go there and it's all going to be fixed. You're still going to put the work in.
Mhm. Do you think Latin America might be better for people with poor dating skills to learn and to skill up faster?
It's not a bad place to learn, that's for sure. You're gonna have to get your Spanish down. What's funny though, for me, I always joke my game in Spanish is better than my game in English because I can just be this ridiculous gringo guy who just gets away with anything that I say because I'm not speaking my native language, right? So it's always, I'll just say the most ridiculous stuff in Spanish, and you just get away with it. It's fun, right? So there are definitely advantages to that. But that also comes down to being okay and understanding how self amusement works, right? So you still need to get the fundamentals down, but it's definitely a good place to learn.
Hmm. Hmm. What would you say are some of the main differences between dating in the U.S. versus dating in Latin America?
The other thing I would say is I think girls just have uh, like they're almost like more fun and free in Latin America. Like they're less like judgmental. Um, they feel a bit more feminine. Um, I think you can get you can get away with a little bit more. They're fiery for sure. They're fiery. They're passionate down there in a way that I think American girls aren't quite that way. Yeah, I think it's just more fun in general dating in Latin America. It's a fun experience, and yeah, I mean, for finding a girlfriend, I think it's a great place as well. Like I had an amazing Mexican girlfriend out there for 5 years. Really enjoyed that experience, and yeah, it's just like if you're tired of the way dating is in America and like you worked on it, like you understand how to go meet women, but you just want to change, Latin America is a great place to go. Is what I would say. But that being said, there are a lot of great girls in America. Like there's a lot of beautiful women in America, like really high level girls, girls that make good money, girls that are really intelligent, um, really sweet, really cool. So I don't want to just completely you know, just say America sucks for dating because I don't think that's the case. In America, you really got to be in the right city. You know what I mean? Like you got to be in a place like Miami, Tampa, Austin, San Diego, LA. Like you got to be in a good city for dating. That's going to help a lot more, right? There's still ways to do it in other cities and the smaller towns, but being kind of one of those hubs is going to make life way easier too.
Hmm. Hmm. I think another thing is in Latin America, you don't really need a car, and so
Well, that's
like
a beautiful thing too.
you
Yeah.
don't have to be like as established. Where I feel like in the States, you have to be pretty established in your city because when you just pull up in a new city, it's like harder in the States, or there's more obstacles. Whereas in Latin
Yeah.
America, just the walkability of the cities and stuff, it helps a lot. I think.
Yeah, that's one thing I didn't even touch on. The walkability of the cities is amazing. Like you have so many of these places where you have everything you need within a 10-minute walk, like the gym, a nice park, restaurants, bars to go out at, a butcher shop. You have everything you need within 10 minutes of you for, rent in a nicer place than you get in the US for maybe, a third or a quarter of what you'd be paying there. And then if you're talking about like the cost of dates, it's a joke. You can take girls to dinner in Latin America for the cost of taking a girl to drinks in the US, which has its advantages as well. And
Yeah.
then,
I think just to double down on that, I heard something good recently, which is that you actually feel a lot more at ease on a date in Latin America, if only purely because of how much less expensive it is. Because if you're going on $100 plus date in the States, in your mind, you feel like you have more like sunk costs and you have more like this has to work. I've like invested $100 in this, blah, blah, blah. But like in Latin America, just because it's just cheaper to do activities that you're not so outcome oriented.
no, exactly, exactly. And if you take a girl for $100 plus like or date or whatever in Latin America, you're taking her on a really badass date because there's not too much that you can do. You're going to a really nice day, whatever it may be, right? And it's not even really needed down there to do that. Um, but yeah, no, there is that lower cost up front to get into dating. You know what I mean? Which makes dating more
Hmm.
sustainable. I mean, you could go on a lot more dates for a lot less money and enjoy the experience while also having the lower cost of living of everything else too.
Hmm. Hmm. I just wanted to double down on this idea one more time because it's very hard to capture the essence of it. But I listened to a video of yours with Patrick Red on his channel, and it really struck me that you just said that like people in the U.S. have no idea what they're missing, like that what's going on outside the US. And it's really like a see it is believe it kind of thing, as I mentioned before. But yeah, could you just kind of speak to that one more time, like what people are missing out when they're in the States?
Well, yeah, I mean, if you're living in the States, you got a normal job, right? You're probably commuting to work. Maybe you got a half-hour commute to the office, working a 9 to 5 for most people. You're saving at most maybe a few thousand a month, or for some guys a little bit more. For some guys, you're just living paycheck to paycheck, and you basically have like an average quality of life, right? Um, Maybe you have a decent apartment and it's okay, and you go on a few dates a month and it's okay. You go to a place in Latin America, you could be in a neighborhood that's super walkable, has everything that we just talked about, the gyms, the bars, restaurants, all within 10 minutes walking distance. And if a girl's outside of that, you can Uber her in for $5, and it's not even, you don't even have to blink to do that. Um, and you're in a dope apartment, you can do all these different things, and you basically, I think there's just a level of feeling like there's just like maximum freedom, when you're in a situation like that versus like kind of being trapped in the system in America. There's a feeling that you can kind of do anything and you're kind of in full control, which I really like over there in Latin America.
Yeah, definitely. So you feel like you have a greater sense of freedom, that you have more capabilities, or that in a way you almost feel like the rules don't apply to you.
But yeah, it's also easier to meet and connect with like some of the highest level girls in certain cities or even certain countries. Um, you know what I mean? Like, and that is a thing that's, it might be hard to meet an A-list celebrity in the U.S. and go on a date with her, right? But you can meet like an A or B list celebrity in Colombia or Mexico and like go out with them and like do, like it's there are
Right.
certain things
Everyone has
that,
a story like that,
yeah, yeah. It's just
like
like
last
oh
night, oh, this girl's on like the national soccer team. And
yeah,
it's
like oh
like that would
this
never
this
happen in
girl's
the
in a huge
States.
movie that just came
Yeah.
out, right?
Yeah.
It's just like you can do things that you just almost can't do in the U.S. or that you would need an extreme amount of like clout or connections in order to be able to do. But in a place like Colombia or Mexico, you can just stumble into a bar like and meet someone like that, and it's just like you're out with them the next night making it happen.
Hmm. And I could see how someone listening to this, they might have a negative opinion, be like, "Oh, you think because you're a Westerner, you're coming in and like you just get better access or whatever." But it's actually not just a dating thing. It happens in the sort of networking and business circles too, where I always thought it was crazy. Like you're down in Playa del Carmen or whatever it is, and you're hanging out with these crypto millionaires and people running multi-million-dollar businesses, and they're just chilling, like smoking hookah with you and like telling you the inner secrets of their business basically in a very like nonchalant way. I think the environment sort of sets things up like that in a way as well. Whereas like if you were in Boston, people just wouldn't be speaking to you the same way. They wouldn't be as open about their business or how they make money, or I don't know, like inviting you to do stuff. But the environment of Latin America just sort of lends to less barriers. Would you say?
Well, yeah, no, there's an element of kind of being on the inside, right? To where you meet a guy, like for example, even take the way I met like Joe DeGeni, Martin, all those guys. It's like I met them through other connections, through other friends. So it was like, all right, I'm meeting these guys. I already know they're cool because my friends know them. They already know I'm cool because their friends know me, and it allows you to have instant connections with really cool people that might be harder to do in the U.S. And then from there, yeah, you can continue to level up and just just keep meeting really really high level people as word kind of gets around.
Hmm. Definitely.
And then that's something that helped me level up as an entrepreneur as well, especially those early years in Mexico City. Guys kept coming through who were grinding, making it happen, uh, and that kind of showed me what was possible.
Hmm. I know a lot of people were asking me on Twitter and in the chats about Bogota versus Mexico City, two of course, the largest cities in Latin America and also very popular among digital nomads. Dave, would you be so kind as to give us like a little bit of a breakdown between the differences between Bogota and Mexico City, and what type of guy might be more attracted to one or the other?
Well, it's funny, man, because it's been a long time since I dated in Mexico City. Like I was in an exclusive relationship when I was over there for basically the last 4 years that I was living there. So it's hard, and I was maybe single for a few months of that time. So it's hard to give a super accurate take
Yeah, it's
on.
fine. You could speak to everything, just kind of like the weather, cost of living, all, like kind of the whole package of the
Yeah,
city.
I would say just like dating wise, I think in both places can be great. Again, have the fundamentals down. You're going to do really well in both places. Uh, I would, yeah, like they're both. It's Latin America. Like you're going to be able to get access to really attractive women, and it's just about being able to communicate them in a good way, and you're going to be in a really good shape. Have your style down, have the other stuff down. You're going to kill it in either location. I would say Bogota may be a bit easier, but Mexico City is great too, and you have tons of variety and options dating wise there. As far as other things, I would say one of the things I don't like about Bogota is the weather. Like the weather in Bogota, maybe it rains. I'll put it to you this way: every time I would leave my house for more than 10 minutes, I took an umbrella, even if it was sunny out, because I never knew when it was going to just randomly start downpouring. It could happen at any time throughout the day, and it was normally maybe around like 50 to 60 degrees. Sometimes it'd be like 65, 70, 75. But like the weather varied a lot, and that was just it was an annoying. There was enough nice days, but it was still annoying to me. Whereas in Mexico City, it's basically like 70, 75 degrees or more every day. And it's almost kind of like walking around at room temperature, right? So definitely weather goes to Mexico City. Food definitely goes to Mexico City. That being said, Bogota has great international restaurants, which are really cool. But there's not like I'm not going around trying to eat Colombian food, right? Like when I'm eating Mexican, like most people like Mexican food better than Colombian food. I'll put it that way. And there's a
Hmm.
lot of good food to be had in Mexico City. Cost of living, I would probably say it's cheaper in Bogota right now because I think it's just like a lesser known thing. Like nobody, it's not like people aren't driving to go to Bogota as much because I think a lot of it's because of the weather as well, and everyone just goes to Medellin. And then yeah, I think in Mexico City it's been kind of flooded with gringos these last few years. So that's been kind of an interesting new development that's driven up prices a lot in terms of rent, food, things like that. And then I would also say just the number of gringos is so much higher in Mexico City. Like in Bogota, I could walk around for hours and not see a gringo. I could go out like whole nights and maybe see like one or two gringos. And it's funny because everyone always say, "Oh no, there's a lot of gringos here," but I would never see them. So I kind of there's an element of feeling like you're the only one there, which I think is kind of a cool thing.
Hmm.
Um, Versus in Mexico City, you're gonna see white girls from California walking around with Valley Girl accents. From everything I've heard, like I haven't been back in about 6, 7 months, but that's kind of how it is. I mean, you probably speak to it better than me, but yeah, that's kind of the take I would have on it.
Yeah, I'm in Mexico City right now, and it's definitely stunning the amount of foreigners that are here, and actually the amount of female travelers, like groups of like 3 to 5 women traveling together. I didn't know it was on their circuit, but it seems to be.
Is there a lot of attractive girls to travel there too, or like what's the vibe?
It's like just like blonde American girls, I guess. I'm definitely seeing groups. I mean, everything. It's like those
Doing
like
bachelorette parties down there now, just getting it all
yeah,
done.
yeah, bachelorette parties. Whenever I see like Asian or Indian people, I know they're from like Toronto or New Jersey or something. Um,
It's funny, man. No, it's a trip. It's a trip. How much has changed?
yeah, did the rising prices and the whole like gringo wave? Does that play a big role for you? Is that something that you try to avoid? You try to find like more off the beaten path places? Because I guess it works both ways because as a dating coach, maybe people are coming down for coaching or boot camps or whatever, and they'll probably want to go to places with airports, right?
Yeah, I guess I don't really care that crazy much about living like a local or anything like that. I don't mind it a ton, but it definitely is. It's a variable that just adds annoyance, right? Like what used to be this cool spot, and I'd be kind of the only gringo around. Now is just it's obviously it's like flooded with girls from like California, and it creates a little bit of a different experience than what it might have been like before. That being said, there's still ways to make it a more authentic experience, even in a place like Mexico City. I'm sure right? Like there's tons of places in there that are still kind of undiscovered, or that you can go and really get that authentic Mexican experience. So,
Hmm.
uh, yeah, yeah, so I do still think it's a great city. That's not the reason why I left.
Hmm. So we wanted to talk about like setting up a home base, and that's something that you're thinking about. And I think that's something that a lot of nomads are thinking about, that maybe they've done a year or two or even 5 years fully nomadic, bouncing around a month or two per place. And now they want to settle somewhere. And of course, there's no perfect place. Some people prefer the beach or big cities or whatever. But what's your kind of thought process? Like, what are the factors that are going to be important to you and where you choose your next home base?
Yeah, I mean, I am in the process of like figuring out that next home base, and I think anytime you're trying to figure out a home base, like the main elements you got to consider are things like cost of living, weather, dating, like types of food, what type of city you're talking about. Like, are you looking for something near a beach? Are you looking for a place like in a big city? Uh, what's your sexual market value going to be? Like I talk a little bit about this in one of my books. It's like, okay, what's it like down there for dating, basically. What type of guys are there? What type of girls are there? Uh, what type of opportunities are there for business? Like, are there good connections to be had there? Is there a good scene over there, or is it completely barren of that? So I would say like these are all different kind of elements. Like even like time zone. Like, what's the time zone? Is it some weird ass time zone, or is it like generally anything in Latin America is going to be a decent time zone for working like in the
Hmm.
U.S. Um, but yeah, I would say those are some of the things I kind of keep in mind. And obviously, as you grow, like some of those things are going to factor in more than others. Like if you have a girlfriend, then the dating doesn't really matter as much, right? Or if you're making a ton of money, then it's like, okay, I can go with a little bit of a higher cost of living than maybe I would have, back years ago. So you got to weight different things based on kind of where you're at and what you're looking for.
Hmm. Okay, I'm going to ask you one or two dating questions because people will be mad if I don't. But I hope I'm not setting you. I'm not setting you up, bro. So answer
That's all good.
answer it as PG as you want. But um, okay, a question that came in was best nightlife spots in LATAM and where are the hottest chicks?
I would say like Bogota is pretty good nightlife. There's sexy girls there. There's a lot of variety in terms of places to go. Uh, like there's some good going out areas where it's like really condensed and easy to like pop into different nightclubs and things like that. Uh, Mexico City used to have better nightlife. It's still decent if you go to the right place. Let's say in Polanco, Roma Norte, things like that. But you gotta play the game a little bit. Like if you go to a place like Republica in Mexico City, you gotta be able to play the door guy game, right, and be able to work your way in that way, which isn't always the easiest thing for people and can be kind of annoying. Uh,
Hmm.
like I always like the beach places as well for nightlife. Like it's a little bit more ratchet, I would say, but maybe places like Mazatlan, Playa del Carmen. It's a different type of nightlife, but just hanging by the beach. I've never been to Brazil, but I've heard that the nightlife over there is amazing. I've heard the nightlife in Argentina is really awesome as well. Uh, the thing is, you got to look at places in terms of okay, like what are the typical hours here? And a lot of places in Latin America go late. I know in Argentina they don't even go out until like 2 or 3 a.m., which is tough, right? If you're trying to like live a normal life, and then I
Yeah, once
know
you hit the
and
mid 30s, that's a tough one.
yeah, no, it's asking a lot to you leave your house at 2 a.m. to go out, right? Like if I'm coming home at 2 a.m., I'm like, oh, this is a good night. Now, like leaving at 2 a.m., it's a whole different story. But yeah, in general, like a lot of places in Mexico, like Guadalajara is solid. Uh,
Hmm.
yeah,
I agree with
Guadalajara,
that.
a lot of good places in Colombia, Brazil, Argentina. Yeah, I mean, you can't really go wrong with like any of those main cities within those countries.
Okay, so basically any major city with more than 1 million people will probably have good
Yeah,
nightlife.
I've heard Sao Paulo can be really good too. Yeah, I mean, you're gonna like Latinas like to party. You know what I mean? They're gonna be out there.
Yep, yep. And I guess just taking the second part of the question aside from nightlife, but just from a pure, uh, from just a pure hotness perspective, like where are the hottest girls in Latin America? You think?
It's funny, man. Well, I think yeah. I mean, Colombia and Brazil probably have to be at the top. I would say. Like girls from Colombia, like especially a place like the coastal girls, like Barranquilla. Uh, that place is like a gold mine. I think for like the girls I've met from Barranquilla are just next level in terms of their just natural attractiveness. I was super surprised, and that's where like Shakira is from, uh,
Hmm.
and that other Colombian TV actress. I can't remember the name. She's on she was on that one show, like the one sitcom show. I can't think of it.
Like
She has like the really funny
Sophia,
accent. Yeah, Sofia
Or
Vergara. Yeah, I
yeah,
think she's from.
yeah.
I think she might be from Barranquilla as well. But that place is a gold mine. For like meeting girls from there is really good. And then yeah, I think Brazil. Every time I've met girls from Brazil, like I haven't been there, but I think they just have like a really good body type. You know, they all kind of look super thick, but then they're really fit. Like all of them somehow, or for the most part they are.
Hmm.
And I think that's like a unique combo. Then you have girls in Argentina that kind of look a little bit European. They don't. They may not even necessarily look like they're that Latina, but they have a really interesting look too. Again, I think there's just beautiful girls everywhere. Like girls in Mexico have their own sort of like natural beauty to them as well. Like I think girls in Guadalajara are really beautiful.
Hmm.
Girls from that region are really beautiful. So yeah, I mean, I'm just a big fan of Latin America in general.
Guys, I think you'll have to join one of Dave's programs to get the real inside cities. Um, okay, I'm gonna ask you one more throw you under the bus question. Do your best, and that is, I'm honestly surprised that you're open about talking about like SMV differences in different cities and about how your value in the market might be better in different cities. I'm surprised you're willing to talk about that because it's a bit cancelable, but um, like for guys listening, where do you think that an American guy could maximize his SMV the most, and then how do you like play that off against maybe low English levels in these areas?
So in terms of like going to Latin America and trying to maximize it, you mean?
Yeah, like where can they maximize their value the most in your opinion?
Yeah, well, I would say like any major city in most of these like I would say pick a city. You got Sao Paulo, Buenos Aires, Mexico City, Bogota, Medellin, like even a place like Lima for certain parts of the year. You know, figure out what city you want to go to. Make sure that you have like some sort of high income skill or business that's going to make you money. Ideally, you can do it for like 3 4K a month, but ideally you can get past like the 10 15K a month range. If you can do that, then you're pretty much going to have the ability to and the freedom to just kind of do whatever you want in a lot of these cities for the most part. Like I know Sao Paulo's a little bit more pricey. On the other hand, Buenos Aires is super cheap right now, so it just kind of depends. So if you're not making quite that much, maybe Buenos Aires is a better spot for you right now, for example, right? So kind of figuring out based on where your income level is at, uh, you know, pick the right city from there. And then the other thing I would say is like make sure your game is on point, right? Your communication skills, all of that, your look is on point. Make sure you're fit. Make sure, yeah. So it really comes down to like money. Make sure your style's on point, your communication skills are on point, and then you're in the right city. And if you can get those things down, you're gonna do well in any Latin American city.
Yeah. Would you ever tell guys like if you had a guy with no style to go to a city with less style? Because maybe like Buenos Aires, they have more emphasis on style, but maybe I don't know, Puebla, Mexico, they don't really care too much about the fashion.
Well, I would just say,
And so,
bro, improve the style, right? Style is such an easy thing to improve. You can just go online to a website, and that's one thing I work with guys on specifically is improving their style because once they improve the style, everything else, makes a massive change. Like the confidence they have in themselves, the way that women look at them, the impressions that they're making, all of those things are like, they completely transform because of the style. So first, get the style on point. That takes, maybe a week of like doing a little online shopping and maybe a few $100s, and then from there, then you can go anywhere.
mhm,
Yeah, you
definitely.
don't want to just regulate yourself to shitty style cities.
Okay, okay. Dave, do you feel like at this point you've like learned everything there is to learn about game? Do you still have areas of game that you're continuing to learn about? Do you feel like you're still learning new things?
But I think you're always gonna have the beginner's mindset with everything, right? Like there's never a point in anything that you can't learn more. And I think even I've learned more about myself when it comes to relationships. Like having been in a long term one for a while, that kind of changed my perspective on how I see that and kind of what I want, as well as getting a little bit older. Your wants, your needs change in terms of what you're looking for, and I think that's for me that's been kind of an interesting thing because when I was in my 20s, it was always like, all right, let me just go and try to get as many girls as I can, and not really care, right? But now it's like, okay, I'm not just looking to sleep with any girl. Like I'm actually like I enjoy making deeper connections with girls, and I'm a lot more focused on that, rather than let me just go and try to hook up with as many girls as possible. Like that's lost some of its luster. It's still fun every now and then, but it's lost some of its luster to the being able to go out there and make deeper connections and really enjoy your experience with a single girl.
Hmm. So is it fair to say that you give different advice to students of yours in their 20s and students in their 30s?
Well, at the same time, right? It's for most guys, it's going to come down to most guys probably haven't had they've never experienced having options, right? That's something I got to experience when I was in my 20s, having a lot of options, and I was able to choose the woman I wanted in my life from that place. Most guys are never at that point. So most guys, whether in their 20s, 30s, 40s, they need to get to that point before they can do anything else because they need to be able to be intentional about the women that they, eventually have in their life, right? And maybe the one woman they eventually tried to build something with. So that always needs to come first. And what that's going to entail is learning the fundamentals, learning the communication skills that are going to get you options, whether it's get the online dating stuff on point, get the approaches, the conversations on point. And then from there, it's like, all right, you have options. Now let's talk about, how do you actually assess the girls for the right relationships, building the deeper connections, doing all of those things. But it starts really no matter what with having options and then kind of building from there. So most of the stuff is going to be very similar in that regard.
Okay. So building options seems to be a common point for everyone is and that's something I guess that you help with is you start to help them like fill out the top of the funnel.
Yeah, exactly. Then from there, they have more data in terms of what they like, what they don't like, and then they can make better assessments, right? Rather than choosing a girl out of scarcity, which maybe some guys in their 30s or 40s, maybe they did that earlier in their life and they made the wrong choice and ended up getting divorced later on. Uh, being able to avoid that by choosing from a place of abundance, and then from there, you can actually have a girl that you're selecting rather than one that you just had to take out of need, and that usually leads to a better scenario.
Does divorce scare you? Because I bet you've heard like every story under the sun at this point.
Well, I think a lot of times when guys are getting these bad divorces, I think they've chosen they just haven't chosen well with the women that they're marrying. I think in a lot of the cases, and obviously there's exceptions to that, but I think in large part, if you choose the right woman, number one, divorce is going to be a lot less likely, and then number two, uh, she's it's less likely that she's going to come after you with that sort of thing, right? Uh, Again, you never know. There are exceptions. I've never been married. I've never been divorced, so take this with a grain of salt. But I do think choosing the right woman and then also understanding how to run a relationship the right way, set boundaries, pace things, lead things is going to greatly uh, minimize the chance of you being in some really bad divorce where the girl's going to be taking all your stuff.
Hmm. Hmm. And then for you personally, does that like have all the stories you've heard from clients over the years, has that sort of changed your approach to like long-term relationships?
Not really. I would say, I think when you're coaching clients, I think a lot of it comes down to you got to kind of meet them where they're at and realize that the experiences that guys have had are coming from a place of where their perspective is, right? And they've had a lot of those experiences because they don't really know what you're about to teach them. They haven't experience what you've experienced, right?
Hmm.
So they're more likely to have bad experiences as a result of that, right? Whereas if you take a guy like me, like I've seen a lot of stuff, I've experienced a lot of stuff myself, and I can spot things that maybe the average guy doesn't spot or he doesn't see, right? Maybe a red flag that he doesn't see or a compatibility issue that he doesn't see, and so I'm able to avoid those situations. So I'm confident in my ability to do that, and then also my ability to help guys to avoid those situations in the future.
Hmm.
But also I guess I would say realizing that because they've had those bad experiences doesn't mean that dating is completely screwed in general.
Hmm. All right. At this point, are you like 100% on the Latina train, or could you ever go back to like dating American women or I guess Asian women?
I could definitely go back to dating American. I'm actually dating an American woman right now, kind of like a new thing. But yeah, I mean, like I try to again keep an open mind with everything. You know, if you meet a cool American girl, by all means, like go for it, right? If you meet a cool Latina, great. At the end of the day, it's not about where they're from. It's about, you know, how strong is the connection, how compatible you guys are, what's the life vision? Is that something that is, you know, is it something that can be combined? Is it something that's compatible, or is it completely different? You know, what's the vibe? Is there chemistry there? All these things are a lot more important than exactly where they're from. Um, so yeah, I'm open to anything really.
Mhm.
But I do have a soft spot in my heart for the Latinas. I'll be real. But
Is it weird to go back to dating American girls? Are you like confused when the bed's not made and stuff and little things like that?
it's definitely a little bit different. There definitely are, yeah. There's tons of American girls that are like warm, nurturing, cool. They're chill. Uh, and they'll do that type of stuff. You know what I mean? But it's less likely that you're going to find that than with a Latina girl for sure. But yeah, there's pros and cons to each side of the coin. I would say because
Do you
there
feel
might be
like it
conversations you can
actually Sorry,
go
go ahead.
ahead.
I was gonna say, do you think it actually makes your game worse in the States because you're sort of like you're used to playing a different game?
Well, I think you got to be able to take bits and pieces of your game in different countries and just kind of combine them into one thing. I saw a video from David Bond. He's also like I was hanging out with him and Justin Mark in Mexico City several
Mhm.
years back. Right, we're talking about the beginning, but he had a good video just talking about how yeah you just have to combine the different parts of your game
Yeah,
that
the
you learn in these
software.
different cities. Yeah, it's like software, right? And you just kind of like download it, and I think that's kind of how you have to look at it, right? Like when I'm in Latin America, I know I kind of have a little bit more of a goofy game where I'm like more self-amused, just saying ridiculous shit in Spanish, enjoying myself, having fun. And in America, you know, it's not maybe it's still self-amused, but maybe not quite dialed up to 100, right? It's a little bit more leveled off, and maybe I'm focusing also a little bit more on the connecting or like this or that. So there's different things that kind of come into play in different countries and different cities that you're in.
Right, right. And it's just like a fun like transition learning period where you're trying to adjust your software to a new surrounding and you kind of have to remind yourself like, "Oh right, like this doesn't work here." And that kind of thing.
Yeah, like you know, I've been in places like Japan where I've lived in Japan, and I got there for the first few days. I'm like, what the fuck? Like what is going on here? How does this work? And then eventually you kind of start to figure it out. And then oh, now I know how to lead girls when we don't speak any word of the same language. Like I can figure out how to go on a date like that, and I can figure out how to move things forward or how to approach girls like that. And then maybe now I can use this with some of the nonverbal communication I have with girls in America or girls in Mexico or girls in Colombia, right? So there's always that aspect of being able to build and learn something new when you're in a place like that.
Hmm. Yeah, there's so many things I could ask you about it. I don't want to get too deep on like little game tactics because that's what they'll have to follow you for on Instagram and all your other platforms. I was curious about one thing though, because what you were kind of alluding to is the opposite of my experience, which is around humor. And so, would you say that humor is a more important part of the courtship process in the States or in Latin America?
Well, I think humor plays an important role in both. I just think, you know, people have different personalities, right? But for me, what I've realized is when I amp up the humor when I'm in Latin America, even to just like a whole nother level, just like dropping innuendos that I think are funny,
Hmm.
just saying ridiculous shit. Like it just tends to work really well because girls can tell that I'm legitimately enjoying myself, um, and and it also plays into the part that I can just get away with more stuff when I speak Spanish, being a gringo over there.
Hmm.
Because my Spanish it's good, but it's not like 100% good, right? So I might say things a little bit wrong, and it just kind of comes off like kind of ridiculous.
Gotcha, gotcha. So you
Yeah,
feel like
it
you
is
can
important in
be,
both.
yeah. Because I always thought the US was like more humor centric, wherein like Latin America, I feel like you don't like, I feel like you don't need humor to be part of the process, but in the States, you almost do. I could be wrong.
Well, it's more basic humor, right? It's not like you're not reinventing the wheel there. It might be like,
Right,
if you
right,
speak a
right.
little
It's more
Spanish,
like
it might be like,
intellectual humor in the States, whereas in Latin America, it's more like sort of like physical humor or like children humor, I
yeah, like
guess.
like for example, one of my go to lines whenever I'm in Latin America, whatever city I'm in, girls ask where I'm from. They'd be like, "Oh, de donde eres?" And I'd be like, "Oh, like if I'm in Mexico City, oh, soy de." Mexico, soy de Ciudad de Mexico, and I'll be like, in mi corazón, and like in my heart, like I'm from Mexico City in my heart, and then I know
Uh-huh.
they're always gonna laugh like right on cue, and then they're gonna ask me like where am I actually from and all this stuff, and it's just gonna like lead to a fun conversation right off the bat, right? By saying some ridiculous joke.
Right, right. Soy de
Um,
Tepito.
yeah, like yeah, even like saying like that, like yeah, like I think it's funny. I think Freddie used to have a line where he would say like, "Oh, like I saw you in Tepito, like you were selling tamales on the side of the street in Tepito, like in Spanish." And it would just
That's
the girls
mad
would start
funny.
cracking up, like it was like you can that's kind of what I mean by the ridiculous humor.
Oh man, no, it's true. It's true. Like, I have a bunch of these lines too, but I want to hear some of yours. Do you have a couple more like go to like fun lines or like conversational gimmicks that people could bring up, especially in Latin America?
Yeah, I would say one thing I like to say is okay, we'll talk about dancing, and if she says she's a good dancer, I'll be like, okay, and entonces tienes ritmo, like, and so you have rhythm, and
Uh-huh.
they'd be like, oh yeah, I have rhythm, and I'd be like, oh, okay, muy bien, es muy importante por muchas cosas, no solo bailando, and like it's really important for a lot of things, not just dancing, and
Yeah.
that would come across really kind of corny in the U.S. I think, but in Spanish it just seems to work, and
Hmm.
yeah, like it just works well. So I'll drop that in like 90% of my dates when I'm down
Yeah, what are some like conversational themes? Because obviously you're the conversation Casanova. We have to ask you about this. What are
there.
some good conversational themes in Latin America? Because some people might not. They'll be like, "Oh, I don't know what like is interesting here," or you know what I mean. So they like, what are some good conversational topics? Dancing. Uh, yeah, give us some stuff.
I mean, dancing, music. You can talk about Bad Bunny. Like every girl down there seems to like Bad Bunny, which is kind of hilarious. Like talk about reggaeton, talk about dancing reggaeton, right? Basic stuff. I mean, no matter where I am, I like to talk about adventure. You know, what type of adventures she's been on. What does she like to cook? Does she cook? Going to the gym? You know, how does she like to stay active? Um, yeah, yeah. It's been a little while since I've been like
Hmm.
going hard in Latin
And you know
America.
what is an
Lately, but
advanced level of game is like you sort of start fitting in some of those um you start fitting in testing for compatibility and testing for red flags and stuff like that in the questions. And on the surface level maybe they seem like lighthearted questions, but you can kind of like infer a lot about the girl and her blueprint, right? I guess that's kind of advanced, but right, you'd be like tus amigas son locas, no, right? And you have crazy friends, like for example. um
yeah, no, yeah. I think that's another thing too, right? You kind of get a sense of like almost testing for compatibility earlier on than in the states. You know what I mean? By doing things like that to see, okay, is this girl a huge party girl? Does she cook? Does she does she actually work out? You know what I mean? Like what's the vibe? You can do that. Yeah, you can kind of screen a bit faster than you would otherwise.
mhm, mhm. I think one question that a lot of nomads discuss as we're sitting around the table is whether we would establish our families in Latin America or we'd potentially bring the girl back home
Oh,
and
that's a good one. Yeah, that's a good one.
set up a base either in our hometown or maybe just in like like a good city in the states, right? And so it's like so you meet this girl in Mexico or Colombia or whatever. What are your thoughts, Dave, on bringing her back to the States, which is actually very hard to do, versus, basing up in Colombia kind of on her turf?
Yeah, I think my opinion of this has changed a lot over the last few years, maybe since COVID happened. I think I always had this idea of coming back to the U.S. and establishing myself in the U.S. after if I met a girl in Latin America, like that would always be the plan. I think it's shifted a little bit now, could be just because I'm kind of bearish on the future of the U.S. In terms of I think the direction it's heading. Just like the whole woke culture is just a little bit much. The education system I think is completely fucked in the U.S. There's just a lot of things like inflation's crazy. There's just a lot of things that aren't optimal right now in the U.S. and definitely aren't optimal when it comes to raising a family. and I would be more apt to want to do so, I would say, in Latin America. But I would have to just, yeah, be very intentional about what city that would be. Um, which I haven't looked into it super deeply yet, right? Because I'm not at that point yet. But yeah, that would definitely be something I'm, more open to, and even prefer doing over doing so in the U.S. now, which has definitely changed over the last few years.
Interesting. So you'd probably try to stick it out in Latin America, and you think that maybe the kids will grow up maybe a little bit less entitled, maybe a little more traditional, and just, I mean, overall things will be better on a lot of different metrics.
Yeah, I think so. I think that would be a more of a like a more varied way to kind of grow up. You'd be able to, kids would be able to come across some different dynamics than you might be able to come across in the U.S. and things like that. The key would just be, finding good education, whether it's homeschooling or whatever it may be. Uh, but yeah, that's what I would say.
hmm I mean, yeah, they definitely grow up better dancers.
Yeah, I know they definitely grow up better dancers that have access to Latinas. That have it all set for them. So
Interesting. And so, yeah, I guess like what are some of the top home bases like potentially on your list, at least for now? Like maybe not with the wife and kids, that might be a slightly different base, or it could be the same. Who knows? But what are some of the bases you're leaning towards right now? Is it Buenos Aires? Is it Playa del Carmen? Is it Medellin? Like what's kind of the short list right now?
I would say short list is will probably be, I don't know, a place like Bogota. Um, Buenos Aires is definitely on the list. There's some different places in Brazil. Like some of my friends and I have talked about Sao Paulo. Uh, even potentially Rio, but that might be a little bit too hectic. Some different places, probably like in northern Brazil, but probably not for like a home base. That'd be more of like a travel destination. Even a place like Lima for a few months of the year could be cool. Yeah, I've just kind of, I'm in the process now of just doing more research and kind of figuring that out. But I would probably say Bogota, Buenos Aires, probably at like closer to the top of the list.
Okay, interesting. You definitely like your mega cities.
I like the big cities, man. I like the big cities for sure. I've
I
always
see
been
you,
kind
man.
of a
I see
city
you in the
guy.
videos. You got your peacoat, you got the scarf. You almost look like a boss. You look like a Boston guy, but you're in Bogota.
Yeah, no, it's funny, man. But yeah, no, I just like the city life. I think, but I like a city that has cool nature close by, within a 1 or 2 hour drive or 1 or 2 hour
hmm
flight, which is something that a lot of places in Colombia do. Pretty much everywhere does over there. That's another good thing about Mexico City too. You're a quick flight, quick drive away from a lot of cool places. So I definitely like that aspect as well.
hmm Okay,
Because you're
one
not going to get
last.
everything you want from one city. You know what I mean?
It's true. One last question I really like to ask my guests, which is, have any of your high school friends or early childhood friends come to visit you, or have you been able to like convert them to this lifestyle? Because you've been doing this for so long, you were so early. Maybe it was hard to convince people early on. Um, Maybe it's a little bit easier now with sort of the growth of remote work. But is this a road that you found that you had to kind of just do everything for yourself and kind of leave Rhode Island behind, or were you able to kind of convince some buddies to visit you or to adopt this lifestyle?
Yeah, so as far as like, I don't really have that many friends left from high school, and I think I have like 1 or 2 friends left from like growing up who I'm still like decently close with now. So there wasn't a big pool of people for me to really try to convince, because I just lost touch with a lot of people through, like, from my early part of year when I went through college and all that stuff. Because I was also a pretty shy guy, had a girlfriend in high school, so I just didn't have like the biggest social circle, right? Obviously that changed afterwards, but I would say that over time, like I've I've advised people who like follow me on my blog, email, things like that. Like I've advised people who've then like gone on and taken my feedback, whether it be to learn copywriting or this or that, and then eventually they themselves ended up traveling around, and maybe I would meet them out in different places, or kind of see them along on their travels. So that was always a cool thing for me too. When you give a guy a little copywriting advice or this or that, and all of a sudden he's like in Colombia and you run into him, or he's in Mexico City, you run into him. So that's always been like kind of a trip.
Yeah, I bet at this point you've probably had some former clients, former students that have gone on to grow some businesses and become like kind of LATAM savages or whatever in their own right, or just
Yeah, no,
successful
no, I
people.
have. I have, yeah, and that's been a cool thing to see. You know, there's certain guys I've like introduced to Latin America and showed them around a little bit. So it's always cool when you see a guy, kind of, leave the matrix and be able to experience that for himself.
Hmm. What does leaving the matrix mean to you? I've heard you mention it a couple times.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it's just breaking out of the norms of what's expected. You know what I mean? Breaking out of the 9 to 5, breaking out of like the paycheck to paycheck life that most people are in, where you're basically just a victim of society. Like you can't really, I guess when you're out of the matrix, you kind of see things in a different way. You see things from your own perspective. You investigate before just accepting what everyone believes. Right? You're just kind of you're outside of like what the norm is considered, right? In terms of maybe the way that you make money, the way that you think, the type of people that you hang out with, the type of way that you date, all of that. Like somebody who's succinctly in the matrix, they're probably going to be, again, we talked about it, right? Like working a typical job, like just dating the typical girl that they're probably not that excited about, and just having a life that's kind of like okay, right? Getting out of the matrix creates the potential to have an awesome life. Also, a really shitty one, like it kind of takes out the bottom, uh, but it has that unlimited potential on top of it, which it's hard to have when you're like so deep in the matrix.
Hmm. Do you have any techniques for, I guess, increasing people's willingness to create change within themselves, or do you think it's you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink type of thing, or do you think you can instill it in others?
Well, I think that's a big reason why I do the dating stuff is because for me the dating stuff gave me that drive to want to be better in a lot of these other areas. Like I had no idea about any of this before I started getting better with dating. And I think that was the first driver of me going out there improving with women, and doing something I thought initially was impossible. And then I was like, okay, what else? What else do I think is impossible that I can do? Maybe I can create the exact lifestyle that I want and not have to like follow anyone else's rules. And so it just got me thinking in a whole different way and completely shifted my perspective. And I've seen that from a lot of other guys who've improved their dating life and then moved to different places or started businesses or this or that. So I think that's a really easy one for guys to focus on because you have to face rejection, you have to improve, you have to work on your confidence, your communications, because all these different things that are going to make you, potentially better at business, or they're going to make you want to see the world differently or want to experience the world in a different way than maybe you did before. I always kind of joke that's like the first domino, or like the gateway drug to changing the rest of your life.
Yeah, I can 100% agree with that. I can 100% agree with that. Sick, man. Yeah, one of the big reasons I've respected you for a long time is because I could tell that you're someone that was an independent thinker, and you were all about the self improvement, and you were kind of improving things in other areas of your life as well. Because it's hard to be like a lot of these dating coaches or party promoter stuff type people. Maybe they kind of neglect their health, or they neglect physical conditioning or their business and stuff like that. But I think what's cool is that you've had like an interesting life. You've got to live in different places. You're going about things in the right way, pretty much all around. So huge hats off to you.
Yeah, man, I appreciate you kind of following the journey. I've known about you for a while as well because we've had mutual friends. Yeah, I've always liked your intel when it came to Latin America as well. So yeah, it's good to connect finally on here.
Awesome, man. Do you want to tell us a little bit about dating for busy guys? I'm particularly curious about that one.
But yeah, I mean, a lot of the guys that we work with, me and Beast, we have our coaching program. A lot of the guys we work with, they work like 40, 50, 60 hours a week. And really it comes down to how do you weave dating into your schedule? Like how can you be successful as a busy guy, who doesn't necessarily have 10, 15 hours a week to put into going out and approaching girls and doing all this stuff, right? And it really comes down to like a big thing is weaving it into your daily, your weekly activity, right? So for example,
Mhm.
going out there, improving your dating profile, right? And maybe swiping 5-10 minutes a night with a good profile, you're going to get matches. You're going to be able to get dates from that, right? Being able to, instead of working from home, go work from cafe a couple times a week. Go for a walk through a populated popular downtown area, once or twice a week for 10-15 minutes. Just be aware of opportunities. If you're at the grocery store or the gym, like things you're already doing anyway, just be aware of opportunities and go talk to girls if you see them and think they're cute, right? So a lot of these are things you're already doing anyway, like working, going to the grocery, all these things. And now you're just approaching it with that level of awareness. And then, that combined with, maybe setting aside, 1 or 2 evenings a week to actually like have dates with girls that you're excited about. And if you can do that, then yeah, it's pretty easy to work on the dating stuff while you're also working on the business and kind of becoming that well-rounded guy.
Awesome. Well, any busy guys out there listening, Dave is your guy. Anyone looking to move to Latin America with an emphasis on dating, Dave is obviously an expert as well. I really like your emphasis on kind of the whole package as well, but while still maintaining a lot of granular tips about dating, about like how to run a first date, or just tons of tips that you do. So I think you do a good mix of like the micro and macro of dating.
Yeah, no, it's going to be the full package, man. Because otherwise, you're just, either you're the pickup expert who just loses girls 3 dates in, or you're the guy who just loves to connect but can't get any girls at the top of the funnel. So you got to kind of have the whole package. Otherwise, there's always going to be something missing there.
Awesome, Dave. Well, dude, thank you so much for doing this conversation. I definitely had a blast, and obviously, I'm going to continue to support in the future. So, this is the time in the episode where you could kind of share your message with the audience and direct them to Instagram and your other platforms.
Awesome, man. Well, yeah, if you guys want to check me out, go over to Instagram. I post a new reel there every day. Most of them are with girls, where I'm doing, just going over different concepts and things like that. Just at dave.perrotta. I'm going to be posting weekly YouTube videos again as well, with a little bit more of, longer form content, going in, a little bit deeper into certain dating concepts. So you can check that out as well. And if you're looking to potentially get coached by me and How to Beast, you can check us out at beast-coaching.com. See some of the reviews that guys have had to work with us, and go apply to get some help.
Awesome. Yeah, guys, Dave is one of the most legit people in the industry. Definitely endorse him, and I encourage you guys to reach out to him.
Awesome. Appreciate it, man.
Yeah, thank you so much for your time, Dave. Cheers. This has been another episode of the My Latin Life podcast, today with Dave Perrotta. Thanks, everyone, for listening.